Hey everyone, welcome back to Coffee with Craner. I'm so excited for this episode. We have Derek Serra from Westboro Mortgage Investment Company. First time having a MIC, a mortgage investment company, on the show. Derek brings a wealth of knowledge in retail banking, private lending, worked at RBC for many, many years, and holds a degree from Trent University. Also, I believe a licensed mortgage broker. And today he's the president of Westboro Mortgage Investment Company. Derek, thanks for being here.
So do I get to call you Craner or Linden or both, or
whatever you want? Yes.
Right, I think you might be the Craner for today.
Okay, deal.
Yeah, it's nice to see you, and thanks for including me in this. It's great.
Absolutely. So for those watching, Westboro is a great lender partner of ours that our office works closely with. But Derek has a very, very exciting career and a unique background that I think those that are watching, young people, would love to hear how you climb the ranks and are leading a very successful MIC mortgage investment company today. So Derek, talk to us. How did you get started in banking? Walk us through, baby Derek to Derek today.
Well, it's a long story, and I worry that the story is longer than maybe you've been alive. But I started as a teller working part-time at RBC in Bowmanville, and spent the next 23 years working at RBC and enjoyed my time there very much in progressively more senior roles: branch manager, market manager, vice president. And in my last role was a VP for the mortgage specialists. And that's where I got to know Joe Bondi, who obviously you work with, and others who, in time, all, me included, made the move over into the broker space. And so the nice thing about having a banking background is you always have excellent training. The banks do a great job of providing a lot of really great training. And for me, I was able to kind of take advantage of that training, whether it be through the financial planning ranks, other lending kind of components, mutual fund sales, and then eventually all the mortgage training that came with it. And ultimately, what that does is it really gives you an opportunity to take a holistic view of every client and come up with solutions to help clients. And so my step away from the bank brought me into a company that was at the time called XMC, and they were kind of relaunching into the market, an insured and alternative program. And that was also kind of a really neat time for me, where working with the regulators, figuring out kind of what you can do, what you can't do. And having been surrounded my whole life with mortgage specialists who are pretty much all now brokers, they're constantly saying to me, well, why can't you just do it this way? And you should just be able to do it that way. And a lot of times I would wonder myself, like, why can't we just kind of have this common sense view to lending? But obviously behind the scenes, as a regulated lender, there are many kind of things you need to do. And then in the alternative space, regulated, there are many things you need to do. And certainly in the mixed space, there are many other kind of shareholders and competing priorities that you have to manage. And I wound up landing at Westboro. It's almost been 4 years now. And it's been a great journey so far. We've really kind of expanded our footprint across the province and grown the book quite significantly. And so it's been a really, really great run.
Mm-hmm. And for those that don't know, I know we're entrenched with lending all the time, but what is Westboro and what is a mortgage investment company or a corporation?
Sure. And so I think that the interesting part of this is it's a great question, because people kind of tag everyone under the umbrella of private lending. Mm-hmm. And within private lending, there are many different components, from as basic and simple as you're going to lend your friend some money and take a lien on their property, to much more complicated, being a MIC. And so a mortgage investment corporation ultimately has investors. And when you are the size of Westboro, you also have lending available to you through syndicated lines with banks to ensure that you consistently have liquidity available for borrowers. And so you take that money and you lend it out to borrowers, and you're constantly monitoring and managing the investor dollars, the access to the banking line, and then managing that with the money that's going out the door, and ultimately there's a management fee that's assessed to the Westboro Management Corporation, and ultimately all of the returns are returned back to our investors, which makes it a very kind of interesting option as a fixed income solution for investors, because it is something that can be quite well understood compared to some other kind of options that are available when you're looking at kind of fixed income solutions for a portfolio for a client that's got, you know, a relatively decent amount of investment dollars available to them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I appreciate you explaining that. And talk to us about your role, president of Westboro. What does that entail? Many might not know what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, it's funny. I get that question, like especially from kind of investors. They're oftentimes saying, you know, what is it exactly that you do all day? And I love the question because there's a lot of moving parts to working at a MIC this size.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Westboro has been around for over 20 years. It was a family-run business that started many years ago, and a capital corporation bought about 10 years ago and brought me in about 4 years ago to run. And when I got here, ultimately we took what was a very successful family business and turned it a bit more into a corporation, and where it's still located in Ottawa, where our head office is. But the goal was really to stop lending only in Eastern Ontario and lend right across the province, with still a very key focus on Eastern Ontario being a key priority for us.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that came all the expansion requirements in terms of having staff in Ontario Southwest, which we do. We have a business development director who lives in Ontario Southwest. We have underwriters who live in Ontario Southwest. We have also staff who live in the Greater Toronto region, because I think it's very important from a geography perspective to be able to attend all the things we want to be at, to have people who can be available across the province. But our head office is located still in Ottawa, where the majority of the 30 staff live and work. And for me, I'm overseeing the whole business. And so whether it be the deals that are coming in every day, getting out and spending time with brokers, and now that you know my background, you also know that many of the brokers we've worked together for 20 plus years. Even though I haven't been here for 20 years, but people like Joe, I've known Joe Bondi for a long time, and I'm always kind of so excited to revisit where these mortgage specialists who become brokers are taking their careers, because they are true entrepreneurs, and we've spent a lot of time together listening to what they want to do and what they're capable of doing, and now actually seeing it in action, whether it be building teams, building brands, building marketing, and providing, not just one solution to clients, but now you give an entrepreneur who's an excellent mortgage professional a toolbox with access to not just bank products, but alternative products, insured products, and private lending products. And they have all the things they need to be very, very successful. And I'm really proud of all of the mortgage specialists who have joined the broker community and all the success they've had. I mean, you look at these top lists in many of the in many of the networks, and a lot of them are mortgage specialist names that are there, among other great mortgage professionals. And it's a point of pride for me, knowing when they started and where they came from, and to see the continued success out in the market.
Yes, and it's great that those you've connected with in your RBC days. You're now reconnecting with in the private lending space. What's the biggest difference between going from the bank to working for an investment company or XMC?
Yeah, good question. And I mean, ultimately, I think when you're working at any of the big banks, you have that really big, powerful brand behind you, and people tend to migrate to the brand. And that's why the banks have, like you've got the Scotiabank Arena. There's a reason it's called the Scotiabank Arena, and people are comfortable with it and familiar with it. And when you're at the Blue Jay games, you see the TD branding everywhere. And certainly when you're at, there's the Olympics, you've got RBC kind of who own that. And so the big banks really do a great job of familiarizing Canadians with their brands. And so when you step outside of that, you don't have that big logo on your back. It really becomes about you as an individual and as an organization to say, how can we compete knowing that we're not going to be able to name a stadium after ourselves.
Yes.
And it becomes about education. And so you really need to work with brokers who want to work with you, provide them really good education on what the products are, because clients are going to want to know, why am I dealing with this lender? I've never heard of them before. And, just because you're not a big bank doesn't mean that you cannot be a great lender for Canadians on any of the fronts, whether it be alt, or private. And, ultimately, I think for a lot of people, and it's maybe even a generational thing, that most people just kind of got their mortgage at a bank. They went into the bank, they spoke with someone and got their mortgage. And certainly COVID accelerated this, but now things are much more virtual. And so you've got to really have good communication, and you've got to be able to make sure that the brokers can articulate to the client the comfort level in having a mortgage that's not necessarily at a brand that they kind of are familiar with in their day-to-day lives.
Yes, absolutely. Consumers are becoming more savvy and wanting to look at options. For somebody that's starting out their career and they're looking to, we'll start with the banking industry, retail banking, because you have over 25 years in the retail banking space. What advice would you give to that individual before they enter? Maybe things that you've seen when you were in there that if somebody else let you know about would have assisted you along the way.
Yeah, it's funny, I've been gone from the bank for many years now, and I still get the odd request through LinkedIn or otherwise for career advice, because I spent a lot of time in my more senior roles providing kind of advice to people for their careers and whatnot. And so, I would say now what I always say, which is, you've got to pick a spot that you really feel passionate about. I think in some cases, the banks will tend to say, we want you to become a generalist. And so we want you to do 2 years in this role and 2 years in this role and 2 years in this role. And eventually in time, you will be really well organized in your career, and you will have seen a lot. But it tends to be people will, if they're not really kind of passionate about what they're doing and they're in a role that they're not passionate in, they can sometimes not only lose their momentum at work, but even their kind of momentum to do work. And so, if you're interested in, and I kind of have always said, like, there's the investor folks who are super interested in the investment side of the business. If you're if it's that side of the business you're interested in, there are massive amounts of accreditations that you need to work on, and you need to work on them now. Like, you need to work on them so you've got them. I always kind of felt when people were looking to move into the investor side of the business, if they didn't have the accreditation, they'd say, okay, we're going to work towards it. And it's like, well, or we're just going to pick the person who's already got the accreditations, because those will really limit your ability to do your job. And so when you look at that on the credit side, it's similar to making sure you've got all the different accreditations that are required to complete your role. And that kind of got even elevated more so in the last year on the broker side of the business, where now we have level 1 and level 2 mortgage brokers. And so the accessibility to the toolbox being private lending has been limited until you've got all that accreditation in place. And so I think you want to really pick your stream and make sure you've got all the education and accreditation that's required, because I think that's a key element for customers who are going to be asking you, why am I dealing with you? And what accreditations or education do you have to make sure you're going to provide me the right advice? So it's almost like laying that groundwork. And once that groundwork is laid and you've done all the work to get the accreditation, you're likely not going to want to do all that work and then go from here to here to here to here, because then as it goes with accreditation, if you're not actively using it, oftentimes you lose it as from an advice component and or even from an accreditation component. So I think picking your lane, being passionate about what you're going to do, and certainly, ultimately you've got lots of people who have a path ahead of you in those careers, and asking them what made them successful specifically in the career that you're looking to be in. I think they'll give you the good ones will always share with you the bumps along the way and the scratches on the knees and all the different bumps that they came across in their careers to be able to kind of be where they are today.
Well, that brings me to my next question. What do you think made you successful in your career?
You know, success is really a funny thing, Lyndon. Like, you know, people would deem a variety of different things successful. Like having a good solid work family balance is success for some people. I mean, for me, I've always been a very hard worker, and I've always been very close to the people that I work with, and so that's why when you've got a lot of the mortgage brokers that are in Ontario that are very successful, I've known them a long time. We've been friends a long time because we've worked hard shoulder to shoulder together in our careers. And so, you know, it was interesting. I was watching a video yesterday on TikTok, and this person was saying, you know, when you're dealing with people, their response time will define how good they are at their jobs. And he said, you know, it's interesting that most people don't necessarily expect a quick response time. But he said, if you're dealing with a top performer, I'd be shocked if you text them and they don't text you back right away. If you email them, they don't email you back right away. And I've always been a big believer in that. It's one thing to talk about, I'm going to provide a great client experience, I'm going to be a great friend, I'm going to be a great employee. But then what you do with that is defined based on your actions. And I always feel like, especially in this mortgage business, man, you got to be quick, whether it be you to a client or me to a broker or to a staff member who's looking at, you know, approving a mortgage. We have to continue to earn our keep every single day. I think, is it Joe? Somebody's got one of those in their office. The rent's due every day or something. Is that in that office somewhere?
I've heard of that. I think, is that the Rocks, the Rocks quote? I think Joe has a shirt. Rent's
You might,
due.
yeah. One of them's got that.
Joe's
the
got a
rent's
shirt.
due every
Yeah.
day. And I believe in that. And so I think that, you know, as much as you can build relationships that are long standing, when you're dealing on this side of the business, speed and not only speed, but speed with accuracy, I think is really important. And that's how you can define yourself and continue to kind of have long standing relationships with people who, I mean, I always kind of say the words know, like, and trust. If you can be speedy and you can be accurate, people will think of you and think that I know, like, and trust that individual. And once you have that kind of relationship, it can be very powerful.
I agree. Fast beats slow. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, Derek, before I let you go here, exciting stuff. What's in the hopper for Westboro? Where are you looking to take this company? What's on the horizon?
Yeah, thank you. And so, you know, I got to just start by saying thanks to you and Joe and the Super Mortgage team, because you guys have been great supporters. And just like you, there have been many others across the province who have really kind of been very supportive of the journey that Westboro has been on, helping us to get to know the markets that we're lending. So I was just kind of saying to you before that the last time I was out in Windsor, I got to see the new battery plant that's being built. I got to see where the new hospital is being built. And it really gives you a comfort level when you're lending in these markets, where to be comfortable with loan to values, where to be comfortable with, you know, jobs and things like that. And so certainly having many of you who have done that with me across the province has been super helpful when you're in the markets that you don't know as well, to get to know them. Yes. And so Westboro is going to continue to grow. We're looking to grow our AUM again by a significant amount this year.
Our AUM stands for?
Yeah, I knew you were going to say our assets under management. So the entire portfolio. So we're going to look to grow our investor base. You know, we've been paying a very consistent return for the past few years. All this information would be available on our website. And so we continue to have interest, which we're very grateful for. In terms of investors wanting to be part of Westboro and trust us with their investments. And certainly on the broker side, I think 2025 is going to be a very dynamic year for us. I think that there's going to continue to be a need for private lending in the mortgage space. And even as we see this decreasing interest rate environment, and for those of us who have been around a long time, we were laughing even before about having the gray hair versus no gray hair, and how long is it going to take before you have some. But for those of us who have been around a long time, we can remember increasing rate environments and what happens, and decreasing interest rate environments and what happens. And for those folks who are relatively new in the mortgage space, they've only ever really seen an increase in interest rate environment kind of post COVID. And so now in the decreasing one, and that's, mainly for variable. I'm not sure what we're going to see on the fixed rates, but it will create different opportunities. And I do think that, the regulatory environment is still going to be quite stringent. And there's going to be a need for private lending, whether it be second mortgages in some cases that make sense, where people are going to protect their very low first rate mortgages that they're able to hold likely till about 2026. And then others who are just, they have different sources of income. They have different setups for their household balance sheet. It is not the way it used to look many years ago. And I think there's going to be a consistent need for private lending. And, we are definitely set up and ready to go to support all of our broker nation, and in particular, our private members club. So those are the brokers who consistently kind of pick Westboro first for their privates. And we can tell when you do, and we can tell when you don't. And for those who do, we certainly open the door to very fast turnarounds, exceptions, and all the things that we can do to make, your lives as easy as possible as brokers, and win business from your competitors.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm excited to see the growth for your company. I just was introduced about a year or two ago. It's been excellent to work with Matty Ice, if he's watching. Excellent underwriter. Justin's great, and the whole team there. And I'm just glad we could connect on this show, and really open people's eyes to the mixed space and what private lending is all about, and what your role is and your background, Derek. So thanks for being here.
Lyndon, it's a pleasure. It's always nice to see you. And, my only ask of you is that you get out to some kind of indoor golf facility and hit some golf balls before we get back out on the golf course in the spring.
Yes.
Because we're gonna get you out again, and we want to see you crack 100 this time.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, and maybe next time we meet, I'll have a beard as long as you. So,
well, I don't know.
Start now.
We better start now. Absolutely.
Yeah.
What a pleasure. Nice to see you, bud. And
thanks, everyone.
Thanks for your time. Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Cheers.